Hitting the side of a boost plate is only a GX thing, right? I never understood that very well. That mechanic.
Watch your back! Yeah! Go right on left!
Oh really? So in this game, it's the number of frames you're on top of the dash plate gives you the best boost. Does that mean you want to go diagonally over the boost plate to cover more ground? So what you're saying is there's like a certain number of frames you want to be on top of the dash plate for to get a full boost. God, I want a new F-Zero. Fuck. This is like basically a new F-Zero for me though. I don't know these levels. Or these mechanics, really. This is basically a new F-Zero for me.
Watch your back! Watch your back! Finish! All right! First place!
Oh, Gilly guide. You should link that for later. I'd like to watch it. I'm curious. Alright, so it's a whole playlist. Driving mechanics and moves, 58 minutes. And then there's tutorials for each level that are 25 minutes. Or more or less. Okay, this is super cool. I actually, the 1 hour long tutorials, driving mechanics and moves, that seems like really good. Yeah. This seems like a really cool series of videos. From the legendary Wouter, I think. I think. Yeah. You know, there was a quote from Wouter. Is that how you pronounce his name, by the way? Wouter? Anyway, there was some quote from him in his forum signature. I think it was him. The forum signature was, "We'll see who's first by the end of our lives," as in like this competition will span our lifetime, and we'll see who's first at the end. It's an English W. It's a Wouter, or what do you mean? Anyway. Wow, I didn't hit a wall there.
You got full power! Watch your back!
I feel like it's almost an AI exploit to have the refuel boost shit, like the healing pad, like right before the end of the lap, because I feel like the AI never takes advantage of that, like excessive boosting right there. I feel like it gives me an extra like head start at the end or something. Like an extra advantage at the end of the race to like win, in case it's close. Wait, there's two Wouter Jansens? Wait, so this is not the same. Wait. Oh, really? They have the same last name too? Anyway. WMJ. Wait, that name sounds familiar though. Oh, whatever. Sorry. My mistake. I don't know the players that well. I don't know these names very well. I don't know the history very well. I'm just playing some F-Zero X. I need help. Help.
Finish! Alright! First place!
Wooter, yeah. When I said the signature quote, I was referring to Wooter 007. For some reason, I hooked up my N64 because someone wanted me to play Perfect Dark, and I was like, maybe I will. And so I hooked it up. I was just doing like an IRL stream, and then we started talking about Perfect Dark. And so I hooked it up, and then I kinda got bored. And then I went and looked through my N64 games, and I saw F-Zero X, and I was like, I could play some F-Zero. And so I did. And then I still had it hooked up, and like I was gonna go back to Breath of the Wild, but also now there's new complications with a potential flying machine route that is still not developed fully. And I also did a little bit of like routing via started Breath of the Wild studying / routing or whatever by watching videos and comparing different things. And so I've actually been productive with Breath of the Wild today, despite not playing the game. Just like advancing my knowledge and understanding of the game. So that's been like productive for me today, but since I still have this hooked up and it's non-trivial to hook it up because I have to use an upscaler and like get all this stuff hooked up correctly and all the inputs and everything. It's like, okay, I have it hooked up already, I might as well play a little bit of F-Zero X. And so here I am, just playing it. Apparently I got a kill. Not intentional. Oh.
Too bad. You lost.
Oh. Oh, those are jump pads.
You got full power.
Is that rubber banding? Am I gonna get fucking past? No.
Finish! Alright! First place!
Yes, I'm just playing it. I'm just playing it. I'm playing video games. I say we should go through all the novice circuits, and then after the last novice circuit, which I think there's one more for now, after that next cup, then we should watch the WMJ mechanics video, which will take 1 hour, and then maybe we'll go back through like moderate difficulty on all the cups. So let's do King Cup on Novice. If beating all the cups on Novice unlocks the next cup, then we'll also do that one. But if it doesn't and we have to go to the higher difficulty, then we're gonna go watch the tutorial about the mechanics in this game. And we've been going through each vehicle, now we're gonna go to the Fire Stingray, I think. I'm just gonna stick to the pink. I would still like to watch the video though after. Like, I've decided what I'm gonna do.
Watch your back! Yeah! Hold right on left!
What is speedrun? Speedrun is Breath of the Wild. I speedrun Breath of the Wild. I'm a Breath of the Wild speedrunner. Do not want to do that.
You got full power! Watch your back! Yeah! Don't fight on fire!
Oh shit.
Watch your back!
Oh my god. Fuck you. Okay.
Alright! First place!
Sliding only really works at max accel. So once again, the meta is max acceleration. Is that what you're telling me? By the way, I'm gonna watch the mechanics video after this cup is complete. Or if this unlocks the next cup, I will do the next cup on Novice as well. And then I'll watch the 1 hour long mechanics video. Oh, shift boost.
You got full power! Watch your back! Watch your back! Watch your back!
Shift boost!
Too bad. You lost to the team.
Wait, what do you mean max speed isn't a thing in this game? You mean there's like a separate metagame, a max speed metagame? And low acceleration means it's not as fun to play. It's a content stream, holy shit. I like that sparkly star. I like it.
Watch your back!
I was able to get on Chatterbait. I have to, I mean I have an account, but if I want to make money from tokens I need to, I think I have to submit ID and accept their agreements, but I haven't fully read their agreements. There's Jumper, where it's basically just no sliding, but everything else is used. Farthest you ever want to set the slider is 2 notches from max right. If you go beyond that, acceleration gets laughably bad. Wait, what do you mean Jumper? Is that a meta game? Is there a meta game called Jumper, where you don't slide? How does that work? Well, shit. This map is tight.
You got pulse power! You lost your machine.
Any setting right of center is informally called Jumper. It's faster than sliding on a few stages. Interesting.
Right out in front!
Hello. It happens. It happens.
Alright! First place!
There's 6 tracks per cup in this game. Jumps of Doom. Seems like a pretty chill level.
You got full power! Final lap! Way out in front!
I may be dead or something.
Watch your back! Finish! Alright! First place!
Hey, there's no defined crimes in my chat. There's not a defined crime. Just letting you know. Hope you're doing what you want. Why, thank you. I don't know, shit's alright in my chat, I think. It's alright. Thanks for playing. Alright, so what's the deal? Alright, we got this shit done. Alright, so actually here's a question. How do you unlock vehicles? Oh, we got some. Nice! We got this one, which is really cool, the big thing. I always liked the big thing, I think. But we gotta unlock more stuff. But before we do anything, we have to do something special here. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna get the YouTube. We're gonna get the YouTube. Alright, we got the YouTube. This is WMJ's F-Zero-X tutorial, driving mechanics and moves. This is pretty recent, 2017, so this should be up to date and excellent. And I hear it's good, so we're gonna watch it.
Welcome to this tutorial for the game F-Zero-X. F-Zero-X is a futuristic racing game that was first released on the Nintendo 64 on July 1998 in Japan and later that year in the rest of the world. It was developed by staff of the Nintendo Entertainment Analysis and Development, or EAD, section at the headquarters of Nintendo in Kyoto. Some of the key staff members include director Tadashi Sugiyama, chief artist Takaya Imamura, lead programmer Keizo Ota, and sound composer Taro Bando. In 2000, an expansion kit was released for the Nintendo 64 disk drive That included the track design tool the staff had used for the creation of the tracks in the game, a ship design tool, 2 new cups, and an extended soundtrack in full stereo. F-Zero X is a very challenging racing game with some very deep gameplay. Many guidebooks have been released, which include 9 dedicated books in Japan alone. Considering this is a racing game and not some long RPG, this fact is quite illustrative for the challenge this game provides and for how deep the driving mechanics are. In this tutorial, I will first fully cover the driving mechanics of F-Zero X. Once those are out of the way, I will provide detailed and in-depth explanations of all the moves and advanced driving techniques this game has to offer. Efficient driving is the key technique to master in F-Zero X. With efficient driving, you aim to drive the shortest lines possible and try to minimize your steering as much as possible as you can in the process. When touring in F-Zero X, you always want to be as gentle as possible with your movements. Every steering move you make when driving will decelerate the ship to some extent. Therefore, it is critical to drive in as many straight lines as possible to maintain your speed. When you do have to steer, do it gently to keep your grip and avoid oversteering. Great tracks to practice this on are Mute City and Silence with a grip-oriented driving style. Along long turns, try to steer gently, but do take into account it is often better to really take the inside of a corner and go right along its apex than it is to minimize your steering in these situations. Make sure to align the ship on a good angle after a sharp turn to start accelerating away from it as soon as you can. It is good to keep in mind that F-Zero X was released on the Nintendo 64 and optimized for use with the Nintendo 64 controller with that control stick range and sensitivity in mind. It is my experience that if you play F-Zero X on other platforms with other types of controllers, that you will seriously handicap yourself. Often the control stick range and sensitivity of control sticks on other platforms is way off, which makes it way more difficult than it should be to keep good efficient driving lines. Before every race you are faced with the choice of what ship settings you will use. This is a very important choice to consider and one that will have a major impact on what driving styles will be effective. Let's take a look at the settings gauge. The settings gauge is divided into 15 sections from -7 up to +7 of neutral. The more your settings are towards -7, the faster your acceleration will be and the more effective drifting will become. On the other end of the spectrum, the more the settings are towards +7, the slower your acceleration will be and the higher your unboosted top speed, also called base speed, will be. At high top speed settings, the more important grip will become as breaking grip on those settings will lead to very rapid deceleration. It is important to consider that the two settings directly affected by the settings gauge are the unboosted top speed or base speed and the rate of acceleration. What is unboosted top speed? Unboosted top speed or base speed could be defined as the top speed your ship will eventually reach when driving uninterrupted on a flat surface and where the accelerating and decelerating forces on the ship are in equilibrium. To put it in other words, when you are driving on a flat surface and you have a speed lower than your base speed, you will be in an accelerating state. When you have a speed higher than your base speed, you will be in a decelerating state. From this definition it can be easily understood that the ship's decelerating rate is directly connected to the ship's unboosted top speed or base speed. In other words, settings more tuned towards top speed will result in better speed maintenance or slower deceleration at high velocities. The easiest way to get a quick approximation of your ship's unboosted top speed at any specific setting is to drive a completely straight line on silence. Only hold the A button and halfway through the track your speed will start to approach it. To get a good idea of what settings are useful in most situations, take a look at this overview of all staff ghost times on every track with the matching settings. Most of the settings shown on this overview are not the absolute best you could choose, but all of them are pretty close. This should give you a good idea of what you should be aiming for when you start your journey of beating all staff ghosts. The hidden mechanic heavily affected by the settings gauge is the ship's floating ability. This has a huge impact on many strategies in the game where dives can be an integral part. The faster your acceleration is, the better the ship's floating ability becomes. Your floating ability could be defined as the ship's ability to maintain height when airborne. The higher your acceleration settings are, the slower your deceleration rate will be when flying upwards. as more complicated strategies are often highly dependent on gaining height for setting up big dives or flying through the air for long periods of time. A good floating ability and thus matching acceleration settings can be essential. More on floating will be covered later in the move section of this tutorial. Finally, a hidden mechanic only subtly affected by the settings gauge is the machine's grip. On average, +1 tick, for instance from 0 to 1, increases the grip by 1/27th of a grip point. Thus, the difference of the full settings gauge between -7 and +7 settings is about half of a grip point, halfway between A and B grip. This means the settings at high acceleration cause the machine to have slightly less grip and vice versa. This stacks with the effects the weight of the ship has on its grip and with the ship's grip rating. One last effect worth mentioning is that higher grip makes you get knocked around less in collisions with other machines, but the difference it makes, while somewhat tangible, is tiny. Machine weight is something that has many subtle effects on driving as well as some very obvious ones. The first effect weight has is on the ship's acceleration and base speed. Heavier ships will have a higher base speed and a slower acceleration at identical settings to lower weight ships. You could of course just adjust the settings gauge to compensate for the effects of ship weight. Well, it's not quite as simple as that. It turns out that from -7 all the way up to about +5 on the settings gauge, the ship with the lowest weight, the twin Narcissa, will always have the fastest acceleration in the game, as demonstrated by the acceleration test that you are watching now. Above +5 on the settings gauge, things become a different story. The settings gauge will then start to have a disproportionately large effect on acceleration compared to weight at that point. The Red Gazelle, Dead Anchor, or even the Black Bull will have a faster acceleration than the twin Narcissa with the same base speed at settings close to +7. It is important to note that the only factor that determines the deceleration rate of the ship on the ground is the ship's base speed. With settings leading to equivalent base speeds, heavyweight and low-weight ships will decelerate exactly equally as fast. This is also true when traveling up slopes. Because of this, weight does not have a direct impact on the deceleration rate, only the base speed does. That said, base speed is closely connected to the weight of the ship. That means that at full -7 acceleration settings that you would use for drifting, heavyweight ships will have a slightly higher base speed and thus slower deceleration. The higher the speed you are traveling at is above the ship's base speed, the faster the deceleration rate becomes. Only at speeds just above the base speed do the different deceleration rates really have any sort of noticeable impact. Another effect weight has is on the ship's turning ability and grip. To put it simply, heavier ships will turn slower and have more grip. The effects of weight on grip are additive to the effects the settings gauge and the grip rating already have. In other words, the highest possible grip you could achieve is with the heaviest ship, the Black Bull, at full +7 settings. Heavy ships have a wider turning circle for both regular turns as well as for side attack turns, which will be discussed in more detail later. Consequently, it is also harder to break grip with heavy ships. To be more precise, every 300 kilograms will be equivalent to a full additional grip point, so that really adds up. The Crazy Bear, with its heavy weight and E-grip rating, actually has a better grip than the low weight Space Angler with A-grip rating. The effect weight has on grip has absolutely nothing to do with the ship's drifting ability. In fact, heavyweight ships are able to pick up more speed when drifting than lower weight ships, completely independent of the base speed. Drifting will be discussed later in more detail. By far the largest effect weight has on ship performance is on the ship's floating ability. As you may have guessed, low-weight ships will float much better than heavyweight ships. While the most important factor that affects floating may be the settings gauge, weight has a very large impact too. Low-weight ships will decelerate in the air much slower than heavyweight ships will, and will be able to maintain height for far longer, especially at full -7 acceleration settings. Heavyweight ships will quickly sink like a brick. More complicated strategies and diving maneuvers often involve gaining height rapidly to prepare for a big dive, or floating through the air to take a shortcut for long periods of time. For racing strategies like this, low-weight ships will perform much better. This is one of the main reasons why the Hellhawk, more so than the very similar Night Thunder, and the Twin Orida, more so than the very similar Red Gazelle, are very popular ship choices for many tracks. The increased turning ability low-weight ships have has an indirect consequence for the advanced diving technique, double tap dives, that uses side attacks to accelerate rapidly through the air. Low-weight ships can pick up speed slightly faster during this move, which makes them even more desirable for any strategy with advanced diving techniques. More on double tap dives later in the tutorial. Weight does not have any significant impact on the body or boost stats of the ship. That said, heavyweight ships do get knocked around less when in collisions with other ships, and have the ability to knock around lower weight ships more. This is of course very useful in death race or multiplayer. The refill zone, sometimes just called the refiller or the pink stuff, is the pink strip on the road that recharges your energy meter. This is pretty straightforward, and it goes without saying you will always want to drive through this stuff as much as possible without losing time. A misconception that some players may have is that boosting in the refill zone does not take away your energy. Indeed, when driving at full energy and boosting through the refill zone, the energy refilling rate is faster than the rate the boost takes to deplete your energy, so you will virtually stay at full energy as long as you're in the refill zone. However, if you do not have full energy, boosting in the refill zone will still slow down the rate your energy refills accordingly. Boost power is the trade-off of energy for a boost that increases your speed. Boost power becomes available from lap 2 onwards. Dash plates form the yellow arrows on the track that give you a boost when driving over them without any energy cost to them. Of course, that's a great thing, and you will naturally want to catch as many of these as possible. However, there are some things to take into consideration. For starters, dash plates will only give you a C-class boost, regardless of the machine's boost rating. In some circumstances, when you drive a ship with a B or A class boost and you have the energy to spare, it may actually be better to avoid the dash plates altogether and just boost manually instead. Moreover, not all dash plates are made equal. Some dash plates are much larger than others in size. An example of very large dash plates is on the first track, Mute City. Large dash plates often take more than one frame to pass from one end of their hitbox to the other. On Mute City, it is therefore actually faster to take a slightly wider driving line and pass over the full length of the dash plate to benefit from as many frames of boost as you can. This will allow you to build significantly more speed than if you take the absolute inside of the turn and only just briefly touch the dash plate. An important aspect to consider for the more advanced players is that boost will have no effect whatsoever when traveling at speeds over 2000 km per hour. This is actually pretty significant, because the higher the speed is above the base unboosted top speed, the faster the deceleration on the ground will be. Obviously, speeds above 2000 km per hour will be well above any ship's base speed. Boosting will slow down the deceleration quite significantly. In many of the fastest strategies that are being used during time attacks, there will be plenty of times when you will travel at these kinds of speeds actually. It is therefore often quite useful to boost immediately when the ship's speed falls below 2000 km per hour to maintain these high speeds for as long as you can. In fact, many times you will want to chain boosts to avoid the rapid deceleration when traveling above the ship's base speed without boost. This is almost always faster than spreading out your boosting spots all over the track. As a small footnote, the 2000 km per hour boosting limit is equal on the NTSC and PAL versions of this game, despite the PAL version running at lower speeds. The PAL version is the game that was released in Europe and Oceania. In fact, 2000 km per hour on the PAL version would be equal to about 2400 km per hour on the NTSC version. This means that, comparatively, the players of the PAL version have more effective boosting powers at high speeds, and therefore are advantaged on tracks where you can reach these kind of speeds regularly. You may have noticed when playing F-Zero X that you cannot just take a big shortcut and land on another piece of road altogether. Chances are you passed right through the track, or the game made you crash even before you reach there. The reason for this is that F-Zero X tracks are made of checkpoints, with pieces of track between them that connect them. When you are racing, you have to pass all the checkpoints in order to complete a lap. In this way, you cannot just skip a large portion of the track or fly around the start line, for example. There is some liberty to take with checkpoints, however. You could say that each checkpoint has a certain sphere around it that you have to pass through to make it count. This sphere can vary considerably for each checkpoint, but there will always be some room to fly over, under or next to it. On most checkpoints you can actually fly quite far off to the side and still make it count. It is especially the checkpoints that are at the apex of corners that will limit your ability to just take a huge shortcut. Additionally, there are some checkpoints with a rather limited height tolerance, so there may be times when you are flying straight over a checkpoint, following the track, but the game makes you crash anyway. A notable example is a checkpoint on top of the big jump on Wildland. If you fly too high over that one, the game will just make you crash even when you're straight above it. Jump plates, sometimes called jump bars, are red plates that are present on tracks like New City 2, Wildland and New City 3 that launch the ship into the air when you drive over them. They provide a great opportunity for a nice speed boost, shortcut or even very advanced air acrobatics. In the simplest form, you just drive over them for a nice jump and a small speed boost. However, there is a nice trick to get a lot more speed out of jump plates than you usually do. If you hold fully up on the control stick when you hit the jump plate, and then let go of the control stick to make it reset to its neutral position while you are still flying upwards from the jump plate, so right after hitting it, you will get a lot more distance and speed from the jump. The trick is that, by initially holding up on the control stick, you also get the fast acceleration through the air you would get if you would dive down quickly from a jump. Combined with the added distance and longer jumping time, this is a winning combination. Try it out on New City 2 and see what difference it makes. Jump plates do come with a glitch that can have some devastating consequences. The hitbox of a jump plate is not very big. Consequently, if you go fast enough, it is possible to pass completely through it without the game registering it. If you go fast enough to be in front of the hitbox on one frame and then already passed it on the next one, this will prevent the game from registering that you ever even hit it. It goes without saying that the faster you are going, the more likely it is that this will occur. For this reason, new players to the game will most likely not experience this, but advanced players will be pulling their hairs out in frustration really on some tracks like New City 3, where you will want to hit some jump plates at near the max speed of the game. In the more advanced strategies used during F-Zero X races, it is very common to chain 2 or 3 moves together. A chain reaction like this is only possible by taking along the speed from the first move to allow for the possibility of the second move and so on. For instance, you would use a drift to get enough speed to lift off from the track so you could do a subsequent dive that would have otherwise been impossible. In the most extreme cases, the entire race can be seen as one big chain reaction, like on Firefield. This is only the case for the most advanced strategies that you could use on this track, and for this reason I believe it's the hardest strategy in the game that you could perform. Do not worry about doing any of the moves shown in a demo here. After the next section, which will explain all the moves in detail, you will be able to name and understand every move in this video. Although side attacks are fundamentally used for attacking your enemies, they do have many other useful applications. Among the various usages, one of the most useful is using side attacks for cornering. For this application, you use a rapid succession of side attacks to aid the ship around the corner and keep your grip in the process for minimal speed loss. In circumstances where you can't get around a corner using just your machine's baseline grip, you can side attack and create a better angle for you to squeeze around it. An important subtlety for the use of side attacks during cornering is the timing of the side attacks. If side attacks are started before cornering, you will be able to preserve a lot more speed than when you use them halfway through a corner. The more you steer into the corner before side attacking, The more speed you will lose, but also the sharper you will be able to take it. In some extreme examples, when you approach sharp corners at high speed, it may be necessary to break grip on purpose and steer into the corner sharply before side attacking to go around it. This is something preferably only used in specific situations when no other option is viable. In most cases, you will want to keep grip and only start steering at the start of the first side attack. During side attacks, feel free to steer as sharply as possible through the corner. While double tapping R for right side attacks or Z for left side attacks is sufficient to perform a side attack, additional R or Z presses do allow you to take the corner even sharper. This works all the way up to 30 presses per second, every other frame in this game. If you press faster than that, the game will count as holding down the button, which does not work as effectively. Another aspect to take into consideration is that machines with low grip double tap turns sharper than machines with high grip. Consequently, machines with lower weight will double tap turn sharper than heavier machines, even with identical grip ratings. A note on side attack cornering is that this technique is sometimes referred to as jumping. I will not use that term myself in this tutorial, because I think it can be confusing. The term jumping was first coined by a guide of the British N64 magazine back in their January 1999 issue, where they referred to using side attacks as jump the corner. Later, players adopted this term to refer to the grip driving style as driving a jumper, because you always want to stay in grip and frequently use side attacks to take turns. I personally think that this is confusing because no matter what driving style you have or what settings you have chosen, using side attacks to turn is something that is always very frequently used. A spin attack is a move purely used for confrontations that functions as a great offense as well as a great defense to impacts from other ships. It works by holding down R and double tapping Z, or holding down Z and double tapping R. This move can also get you around some sharp corners quite well, but you will lose some significant speed in the process, so there are always better options. As far as time attack is concerned, this move has no real purpose. In Grand Prix, however, you can try doing a spin attack as you dive down and jump to take some ships out in the air for some cool effects. In multiplayer, when the race is already lost, you could always try parking on the road in some narrow section and just continually spin attack to take out your opponents. Slide cornering is a largely useless move that may only come in useful for beginner players. During slide cornering, you hold the R button down for a right corner and the Z button for a left corner. This will allow you to take turns sharply without breaking grip. This move is mostly obsoleted by side attack cornering, as you will lose less speed via side attacks, and side attacks also allow you to take corners sharper. Slide cornering is not to be confused with drifting, which is one of the most powerful and useful moves in the game, as will be discussed later. Blast turning is done by quickly tapping the accelerator during a turn. This is another way to prevent the ship from losing grip at minimal speed loss. While this is one of the main techniques of cornering on the Super Nintendo version of F-Zero, in F-Zero X, this is something you only do for some minor adjustments. Generally, the only cases you will want to use this technique is if regular steering almost, but not quite, cuts it to take a corner while keeping your grip. Doing a side attack in this case will decelerate the ship more than a quick tap on the accelerator. It is also a good technique to use when you do accidentally lose your grip for a quick recovery. This technique is a lot more useful when used in combination with the air-ground glitch, which is an advanced technique that will be discussed later. Drifting truly is one of the most powerful and useful moves in the game. On top of that, it is a lot of fun to do. It will most likely take some serious practice to master drifting, so do come prepared. If you do, however, you will really blow the computer away on any difficulty in Grand Prix, and most stat goals will become a total piece of cake. In addition, good drifting will open up a huge box of tricks of additional moves. It is truly worth the effort to get this one under your belt. Breaking grip at high acceleration settings will let you accelerate quickly with drifting. More specifically, this is effective in the speed range of up to 1000 km/h with unboosted drifting and up to about 1600 km per hour with boosted drifting. At any speed higher than that, it is better to keep your grip to maintain your speed. A drifting turn is done by holding the R shoulder button on a turn to the left or the Z trigger on a turn to the right. It is this opposite of slide cornering. By doing this, the ship will break grip and will start to turn into the corner. This is what could be called the preparing phase, in which the ship will first decelerate while the nose of the ship is turning toward the direction of the corner you are approaching. In the next stage, the ship will begin to drift into the corner while simultaneously accelerating. The last phase is the exit of the drifting motion after the corner. You do this by counter-steering to the opposite direction of your drift to move the nose of the ship into a straight position again and regain grip. Alternatively, side attacks are often used at the end of drifts in combination with counter-steering to regain the grip. The reason why a side attack may be preferable is that you can extend the drifting motion all the way to the very edge of the track, which allow you to gain the most benefit from the acceleration during the drifting motion. The side attack is then necessary to pull the ship back towards the middle of the track and to straighten out. When setting up the drift, it is often optimal to start out wide on the opposite part of the road to the corner. Start the preparing phase before the corner and then drift into it sharply. Ideally, you will get close to almost touching the apex of the corner. After the apex, drift out wide again and aim to both extend the drift for as long as possible and take a nice wide angle to end up close to the edge of the road again when you exit the drift. The best track to really practice this movement is on Big Hand. Ideal corners for drifting are long, sharp and wide enough for the ship to complete the drifting motion. My recommendation is to practice this move initially on the tracks Silence 2, Rainbow Road and Devil's Forest 3, as they have many long corners ideal for drifting. It will definitely take you some practice to get a good feeling for it, but trust me, it will be worth it. Another method for starting drifts involves using a side attack extended into a drift. This may seem like a bit of a useless move, but it is surprisingly useful. You do this side attack by double tapping the same button you would use for the drift and then just hold it down on the second press. By doing a side attack first, you get more control over the starting position of the drift, because you can use the side attack motion to quickly move the ship to the opposite side of the road, which makes it possible to take most corners optimally. Additionally, the side attack makes the preparing phase of the drift a little bit shorter. In many cases you only have limited time to prepare the ship for the drifting position, and shortening the preparing phase can help take on difficult corners as well as shorten the decelerating phase of the drift. It's really pretty easy to do, so it's good to get this into your toolbox as soon as you start to learn drifting. The effectiveness of drifting is greatly impacted by the ship's grip rating. The lower grip rating it has, the more effective drifting becomes. In other words, the only ships that really qualify as good drifters all have an E grip rating, with some rare exceptions for D and maybe C grip ratings. Great ships for drifting include the Hellhawk, Night Thunder and Crazy Bear. In some exceptional cases where there is a lot of floating and other airborne moves going on, and comparatively little drifting, you'll want to consider the Wonder Rat with its D grip rating or even the Twin Orida with its C grip rating. Acceleration also has a big impact on drifting as far as the settings are concerned. So much so that I would always recommend full -7 settings to take full advantage of the drifting power. This outweighs any negative effects it has on a lower unboosted top speed than, let's say, -5 settings. The ship's weight also has a small impact on drifting power. Perhaps counterintuitively, heavy ships accelerate faster during drifting, despite having slightly more grip. It is important to note that these effects are really quite marginal, so this will not have a very significant impact on the time you could get from a race. Noteworthy is that heavy ships have a higher unboosted top speed, but a slower acceleration at the comparable full -7 settings, so this is something to take into account when you make your choice for a ship. When comparing the Night Thunder and Hellhawk, the difference in acceleration at the start of the race really amounts to just about 0.02 of a second in favor of the Hellhawk. The Night Thunder is able to pick up just a few kilometers per hour more on comparable drifts. This is something to take into consideration when picking your ship, as the very marginally higher unboosted top speed of the Night Thunder can mean that, on some flat tracks such as Big Hand and Devil's Forest 3, it is the theoretical fastest ship for a drifting strategy. That said, it becomes a whole different story when picking a ship for drifting when diving and floating is a part of the race plan. In that case, always pick the lightest ship, as the added floating ability outweighs any marginal drifting difference there may be. Moreover, lighter ships can pick up speed slightly faster during double tap dives, so that makes them even more desirable. At the end of the day, on the vast majority of tracks, the Hellhawk is your best drifting choice. When no airborne moves are involved, go with the Night Thunder, and when a lot of airborne moves are involved and comparatively little drifting, go with the Wonder Wasp or the Twin Orida. A switch drift can be defined as a drift where the direction of the drift is changed to the opposite direction while staying in drifting mode. This can be achieved by holding down both the R and Z buttons and just turning into the opposite direction. Holding down R plus Z will prevent the ship from ever regaining grip. There are a few places where switch drifts are really useful, namely the starts of Big Blue 2 and Big Hand and halfway during Port Town. Rail drifting can be seen as an extension of regular drifting. In F-Zero X, the rails on the side of the track don't really stop you when drifting. Actually, they facilitate drifting. This provides tremendous opportunities, of course, to allow for drifting on long pieces of road without adequate corners. The angle you will want to aim for is a ship about 50 degrees turned towards the rail. You can do rail drifting in corners as well, but keep in mind that you have to continually adjust the ship's drifting angle to match a good angle with the rail. It does work a bit better on some rails than others. It's great on rails that are smooth and straight, but on others you will find the ship bouncing back and forth into the rail. An example of a rail like this is the right rail at the start of Mute City. Don't worry about it, as long as you keep a good drifting angle you will build speed anyway. Of course, rail drifting presents a trade-off. You'll lose significant energy when drifting like this, especially in combination with boosting. So it is something you will want to use only in the right circumstances. Especially on opener laps, this will be useful to compensate for the low base speed on straights that drifting settings present. Moreover, rail drifting allows for many additional moves you can do on opener laps that would have otherwise been impossible because of the higher speeds it allows. For instance, on the very beginning of Firefield and Space Plant, you can get airborne and get into some high-speed dives right in the beginning of the opener lap already. Great places to practice this are right at the start of Mute City, Sector Alpha, Firefield, try to get the liftoff onto the ramp, Mute City 3 and Space Plant. As you get better at drifting, you will find that rail drifting eventually becomes second nature. It's good practice to just blow away your energy in a last rail drift right before the finish line. It still counts when you finish with the ship blowing up. Air drifting is very similar to normal drifting, only in the air. It does come with one major complication, however. It is best to keep the ship as horizontal in the air as possible during the drift to avoid height loss. As your direction from left to right changes, the direction of up to down will change equally as much. That means that if your nose is pointing upwards, it will point proportionally downwards after the air drift. This is something that may require some practice to get a feeling for. Generally speaking, if you use it just as a means of transportation, keep the ship horizontal. In other situations, you may actually want the nose of the ship to point downwards after the air drift as preparation for a big dive. Halfpipe rows provide a special case for one of the coolest tricks in the game. Once you get the hang of this one, you will really blow that wide-length whose staff goes out of the water. It works as follows. If you are driving in a halfpipe and you position the ship close and parallel to the edge of it, you can accelerate very rapidly by side attacking. You can even reach the game's speed limit of 3000 km per hour. Now, this will only work on certain straight pieces of halfpipe that are of the right width as to not make the edge too low or too steep. If you are on the right side of the halfpipe, you use right side attacks by mashing the R button, and if you are on the left side of the halfpipe, you use left side attacks by mashing the Z button. Half-pipe side attacks are an intended move in the game. Lead programmer Keito Ota even described this trick in an interview prior to the game's release. He was able to beat the Wildland 2 staff ghost by over 10 seconds during the game's testing. They left the trick in because it was exciting and provided a fun challenge. This trick works because the ship will be tilted on its side while you side attack. If you do right side attacks with the ship tilted to the left side, you will accelerate very fast. Similarly, when the ship is tilted to the right side, you use left side attacks. This is the basic principle behind perhaps the most powerful move in the game, the double tap dive. Using side attacks to guide a dive back down to the track is one of the most powerful and widely used diving techniques in the game. It is not uncommon for a double tap dive to reach the maximum speed of the game, 3000 km per hour. Needless to say, if you get this one on your belt as part of your regular moveset, you will be able to improve your best times dramatically. The basic principle of the double tap dive, DTD, is to flap the side of the track at some high point, angle the ship down, and use side attacks to guide the ship back down to the track. In the process of side attacking and diving down, you accelerate very rapidly in the air if your ship's angle was correct. At the most ideal angle, you can even let the control stick sit in its neutral position while the side attacks do the work for you. Because you are double tapping R and double tapping Z, this dive is called the double tap dive. Contrary to double tap turning, additional R or Z presses during double tap dives have no additive effects. However, for the most efficient double tap dives, you will want to have the side attacks follow each other in immediate succession. So in practice, it does really come down to mashing the R or Z buttons. Double tap dives are tricky to learn and even harder to master. In fact, most of the competition between the best players of this game comes down to how well they are able to execute double tap dives. It truly separates the men from the boys, so to speak. It may be a serious challenge, but trust me, this is totally worth it. This is where the game really begins to shine and all of its potential will be unlocked. Double tap dives to the right or to the left are mirror dives that are otherwise equal. As you probably have guessed, you cannot just start a double tap dives with your ship's nose pointing straight up into the air or something like that. For a double tap dive to the right, you will want the nose of the ship to be pointing down plus left for a great diving angle. Once the ship is in position, use right side attacks by mashing R while holding up on the control stick to dive down. With the help of side attacks, you will be able to dive more or less diagonally down to the track, depending on your starting angle. A double tap dive to the left is the exact mirror of a double tap dive to the right. While this explains the basic principle of double tap dives, there is a lot of subtlety involved into getting the best dives. The majority of the difficulty is really in the setup phase of the dive. It's all about getting the right angle for your ship. If you can manage that, the dive itself will be pretty straightforward. So, what makes a good angle and how do you know what angle to really aim for? It is important to understand the following concept. The more sideways tilted the ship is, the faster the acceleration in the air will be, but the less flexibility you will have in adjusting the diving path. There may also be situations when you need to make a major adjustment to your diving path, so you want the ship to be more or less straight. When you're diving down, it is good to play around with the double tap dive angles a little bit by holding the control stick anywhere between the up plus left, up and up plus right positions. As you can imagine, there's not one secret to mastering double tap dives, but each dive may be different depending on your approach. It takes a lot of practice to really get a good feeling for it, even to the point that you could save doomed double tap dives and really nail great ones. Generally speaking, the more extreme your angles are, the more speed you can get from the dive, but the more risk you are taking as well. I would really recommend to keep it very simple in the beginning. Maybe add one side attack to your dive, see what effect it has. Then maybe add 2 side attacks to your dive. Next try flying out to the side a little bit more for a better angle. Just very small steps. As you are slowly building this up, make it a priority to actually land back on the track every time. There is no shame in not doing the optimal most crazy double tap dives right at the start. That is a major challenge, even for the most experienced player. Tracks to start out with to practice double tap dives are Port Town 1 at the big jump, White Land, the jump before the refill zone, the end of Sector Beta, the jump plates on New City 3 and right at the beginning of Rainbow Road as well. Again, start small and slowly build it up to get a feeling for it. Why do I emphasize to get a feeling for it? Well, generally you are going very fast and you only have the spur of the moment to set up your angle correctly. When you do this, you are applying a form of air control. Air control can be defined as all the movements you do in the air to set up your dive. This will generally be either a form of air drifting, side attacking, or just floating up first to gain some height. Air drifting can be very useful, especially to travel some distance through the air while you are setting up the angle for your dive to dive to a favorable spot. Side attacks are especially useful to flip the ship on its side to get a strong diving angle. Either form is very commonly used, and what may be preferable is situational. Floating up in combination with side attacks can be especially useful for getting a good angle for your dive. As an example, you can get a very good diving angle by first floating up straight into the air and holding down plus right on the control stick while you do a right side attack. Just do some right side attacks and slowly move the control stick up to the up plus right position to move the nose of the ship down. And when you do this correctly, you have a really perfect diving angle. This is actually a very typical series of inputs that you would do to set up double tap dives, and it's very often used. The more sideways your ship is, the faster you can accelerate in the air, but also the less flexible your turning becomes when diving down. This principle is used when doing what is called a low dive form of double tap dives. While the name may imply this is used for dives only that happen from low height, the principle refers to the ship's angle and not necessarily how high you are when you're diving down. Low dive form is not a move in itself, but it's a modification of a double tap dive. It's especially useful for some double tap dives for when you actually have low height to still get a good amount of speed out of them. In the low dive form, the principle is that you force the ship as much sideways as possible as fast as you can to accelerate rapidly. Of course that means that your turning flexibility is very limited, but as you do them from low height, it generally doesn't matter. A great example is the small double tap dive you can do to exit the tunnel on Sector Alpha. You use side attacks to very quickly flip the ship's angle to about 90 degrees sideways. This allows for a very fast dive into the refiller, while you still have a minimal height. If you would do an air drift to first set up your angle, you can never get anywhere close to the speeds you can get from a low dive form like this. If you are experienced with double tap dives, there's nothing stopping you from applying this exact same principle even to dives from great height. Especially in these situations, landing at 3000 km/h should not be any problem. As an example, I show here how to apply it at the end of White Land. You can use an air control into double tap dive to land right before the second to last jump plate and take the speed along to set up a big dive into the refiller below. Additionally, here's a neat trick to forcing the ship into low dive form. When you land a double tap dive, the ship will initially be at the diving angle when you land on the ground, and it takes a little bit of time for the ship to roll back to a position parallel to the road. You can use this principle for a chain reaction of dives. If you hit a jump plate, or just leave the road in another way, when the roll is still resetting, the ship will leave the road at the angle you were. In this case, you can tilt the ship sideways for an air control onto double tap dive, low dive form, with just one well-timed side attack and dive from way high up for a massive dive, easily gaining 3000 km/h. For those of you who love acronyms, I've heard some players refer to this as an ACI, DTD, IQ, ACI, DTD, LDF, or air control into double tap dive into quick air control into double tap dive, low dive form. That gets a bit silly, so let's just say chain reaction. Floating is a really useful technique that works hand in hand with setting up dives. While in most cases you will be floating just briefly to set up a dive, there are also situations when floating for an extended period of time can be very useful. While the basics of floating are simple enough, the nuances of floating are quite complex. Always use a ship on full -7 drifting settings for floating. Never attempt floating with anything less than the settings all the way to the left. If you're trying to float up with grip style settings, you will decelerate very quickly and just sink like a brick. For the best results while learning, the ship ought to be kept rather straight and steady while floating upwards. If each boost does not add to the ship's height, then the ship's vertical angle is incorrect. Additionally, if you start drifting to one side or another, you will probably begin to lose height. In any case, when floating, one gains more and more height by boosting in the air, preparing for an otherwise impossible dive. From the floating nose-up position in the air, the next step is to do a big dive. For learning purposes, I recommend practicing the floating technique on Devil's Force 2 first, just straight up out of the tunnel. The floating technique does take some practice before you can consistently get good vertical angles for gaining height optimally. First, it may seem difficult to point the ship up enough without pointing it up too much. After lifting off, holding straight down on the control stick for too short or too long will cause the ship to sink. Once you have found the correct angle, just leave it there and keep boosting without ceasing. The key to floating is finding the correct vertical angle, not up too much or too little, quickly after leaving the track. Once you can get this upward angle, floating starts to become a pretty intuitive move. The takeoff refers to where the ship first leaves the ground and begins to float, whether by drifting off the edge of the course, over a hill, or by lifting off of a virtually flat area with enough speed. Here are the principles that you need to know for the takeoff. 1. The greater the speed of the ship before taking off, the higher the ship will lift off the ground. 2. The more the ship is angled or turning while lifting off, the less height will be gained. 3. The lower the weight of the ship, the greater the height of the takeoff. As far as the floating path is concerned, the straight path gains the most amount of height per boost. However, advanced players will occasionally want to drift to the left or right while floating, for a few reasons. 1. To aim for a particular portion of the track. 2. To cut off a section of the track for a shortcut. 3. At least some drifting is required in order to perform a good diagonal dive. 4. To change the angle of the dive. And 5. To change the timing of the dive. Hold on, you may be wondering, what is a diagonal dive? Diagonal dives form a distinct diving technique from double tap dives. Contrary to double tap dives, during a diagonal dive, side attacks play no part in accelerating through the air. There are two types of diagonal dives that can be distinguished: air diagonal dives that are done from a floating position, and true diagonal dives that are done straight from the track. All types of diagonal dives have a speed limit of 2000 km per hour, contrary to 3000 km per hour for double tap dive. Boosting during the entire diagonal dive is required to gain speed and to keep the ship in a diagonal diving position. You may be wondering, if double tap dives can get 3000 km per hour, then why would you ever want to do a diagonal dive? Well, as a rule, diagonal dives are therefore only used in situations where you cannot get enough height for 2000 km or faster double tap dives. During a diagonal dive, you are able to dive back down to the track at a less steep diving angle, and therefore you gain some significant speed from a very minimal height. Height that would even be insufficient for a low dive for a double tap dive. Air diagonal dives are always done from a floating position. The process works as follows. In case of an air diagonal dive to the right, after getting an adequate amount of height from floating, begin to drift to the right gently during subsequent boosts in your floating path. Then begin to drift to the right as much as possible without beginning to sink on the last height gaining boost. Then just before the ship eventually begins to sink, quickly move the analog stick to the right to give the last push so the ship will start to sink. Immediately move the control stick straight down and boost in between these control sticks positions. Boosting is absolutely required for a diagonal dive to work. Additionally, holding down the R button in this case will make it easier for the ship to lock into the correct diagonal diving position to the right. When done correctly, the ship will diagonally dive down, with the nose of the ship pointing diagonally upwards into the air. After landing, immediately counter steer to straighten the ship up and keep the highest cruising speed you can. For a diagonal dive to the left, it works exactly the same, but of course, move to the left instead of the right and hold down the Z button during the dive. What is a good example of when you would actually use this? Well, by far the best example that combines all the techniques discussed during the floating section and that uses the air diagonal dive is a special strategy for lap records on Mute City. Watch the following clip and see how many of the principles just discussed you can recognize. The true diagonal dive, TDD, is almost the same thing as an air diagonal dive. The main difference is in the setup before the dive. In a true diagonal dive, you do a diagonal dive straight from the track. So how does that work? As you may imagine, true diagonal dives only work on specific sections of tracks. Luckily there are several of such sections in F0X, so it is really worth learning. As far as the diving section goes, it is extremely simple. If your angle is correct from the setup, all you have to do is hold straight down on the control stick and boost. That's it. You will automatically land back on the track while getting a lot of speed in the process. So how does the setup work then? The setup is a lot more complex and mostly consists of drifting. When you have a section of track that is banked sufficiently, you can drift the track at the exact same angle you would use for real drifting. For example, if you leave the track on the right side, make sure that the ship's angle is at the ideal 50 degrees turning position when you drift, at the precise moment that you leave the track. At the moment you leave the track, all you have to do really is hold straight down and boost. The sections in F0X that have the right banking to do a true diagonal dive include the end of the right refill zone on Silence, the beginning of the corkscrew of Big Blue 2, the end of the half pipe on Wildland 2, and the tunnel on Devil's Forest 3. The tunnel of Devil's Forest 3 is a pipe section. Technically you can do true diagonal dives out of every pipe section if you leave them at the right angle. This includes Sand Ocean 1, but on Sand Ocean 1 you are better off with double tap dives. When watching the true diagonal dive clips, pay special attention to the angle at which the ship leaves the track, because that is absolutely the key to make this work well. The air ground glitch is both a unique and powerful trick in the game. Air ground glitch is a glitch that allows you to basically fly around the whole track at will and rapidly gain height for otherwise impossible dives. It comes with a whole unique set of controls that form a hybrid between ground-based driving and floating. Air ground glitch is activated by landing in the rail of the track and then immediately leaving the track. This glitches the game into a hybrid playing style that contains both part of ground-based physics and air-based physics. Even all the track elements such as dash plates, jump plates and the refill zone all work in the air. Because part of the air ground glitch is floating based, it works best at full acceleration settings and with low weight ships. Contrary to normal floating, during the air ground glitch you can actually gain height rapidly by having the ship tilted on its side. This is usually done with some side attacks, just like you would in preparation for a dive, but then with the nose of the ship pointing upwards. If you get a good angle like this, you can just float up into the air without even the need of any boost. For this reason you can do air ground glitch pretty much at any moment during a race, including right from the get-go in the opener. A tricky part of the air ground glitch is that, unlike regular floating, you can lose your grip in the air, which causes the ship to sink rapidly. This is where accelerator tapping really comes in useful. Just by tapping the A button you can actually prevent the ship from losing grip, just like on the ground, but this allows you to float up very rapidly at very extreme angles. Other moves such as air drifting to turn also work similarly to normal floating. While the air ground glitch can give you a lot of freedom to just fly around, you still have to hit all the checkpoints of the track in order. So while you can technically just fly over the entire track, you still have to follow the road. If you accidentally cut too much and skip checkpoints, you will not be able to land back on the track again, and if you fly out too far, the game will just make you crash. The floating of the air ground glitch is generally quite slow. This is the main factor that limits its usefulness during races. You not only have to find a good spot to trigger it, the dive resulting from the floating has to make up for the time you lose by floating through the air very slowly. Diving down from the air ground glitch works pretty much the same as with regular floating, so you want to position your ship in a good diving angle. There are several tracks where the air ground glitch can really win you some time without doing some excessively difficult moves. These tracks include Mute City, Sand Ocean, Devil's Force 2, Rainbow Road and Port Town 2. Especially on Mute City, you can win a lot of time by essentially air ground glitch flying around both boost laps. The most tricky part of this track is going around the checkpoints of the looping in the air in the right order. Huge chain reactions of air ground glitch floating, diving into the rail to activate another air ground glitch, and so on are technically possible. On Mute City you can dive down into the rail with air ground glitch floating from the second lap and immediately fly back up again, taking the diving speed with you into the third lap. Needless to say, the diving precision to land into the rail is extremely hard to get. The double tap ascend, as the name may imply, is a move where you use side attacks to ascend into the air. Now this is something you want to use to some extent in preparation for double tap dives, quite often, but there is a reason why I mention this only as the last move in this tutorial. The full potential of the double tap ascend is really at the forefront of knowledge we have about F-Zero X. It is a move you can do at all times, but specifically in combination with the air ground glitch, it is very powerful. When ascending with double taps, you really only want to double tap the R or Z button for immediately succeeding side attacks. Unlike all other scenarios, more R or Z presses will actually work against you in this case. At the perfect angle you can actually accelerate while ascending upwards like this. This is of course most easily achieved when in air ground glitch state. If you flip the ship onto its side to some extent, hold down and use double taps, you can accelerate through the air for a very long period of time. But the angle to make this work and the timing of the double taps is very difficult. It's fair to say that no player has come anywhere close to utilizing the full potential of this move at all. As you can see in this demo, you can fly around and keep accelerating throughout most of Mute City with this move. Mute City is also no exception. You can do this around almost any track, in theory at least. Maybe you will be the next player to find a way to utilize this move well and take it to the next level to become the next F-Zero X champion. This has been the driving mechanics and moves tutorial for F-Zero X. Thanks a lot for watching this tutorial, and make sure to stay tuned for detailed track specific tutorials that will follow soon on this channel. If you like to compete in F-Zero X Online yourself, make sure to check the links in the description of this video. Have fun!
Alright. Goddamn. Some stuff was going through my mind while I was watching that. I was thinking about like you could create a bajillion video games and they could all have different mechanics and different little things. And you could spend many years optimizing the shit for each one of those bajillion games. So it's kind of like makes you question, it's like your perspective. Unlike the meaning of it. It makes you think about meaning and purpose and shit. Oh, alright. Does no one else feel what I said? No one feels it? No, I'm playing on N64. N64. Bagnala said what? Bagnala, are you here? There's a futility and an endlessness. Yeah, why'd you say what, Bagnala? I'm basically talking about the futility and the endlessness, and like, it just makes you question. It makes you question the meaning and purpose of it. Like, what is the meaning of being the best in the world at F-Zero X? What is the meaning of it? What is the meaning of it? What does being the best at F-Zero X mean in compared to being the best at another game? What is the meaning? It's generally more impressive to more people if you're the best in a more popular and or difficult game. If you're going from a fame angle, well, that's the one angle, but there's other angles, right? something to be conquered and learn things along the way. But then once you compare, like, time attacking F-Zero versus, you know, like playing Melee or playing F-Zero GX or speedrunning Breath of the Wild or doing a bajillion other games, Barney's Hide and Go Seek, and like a billion metagames. The space of all possible metagames. Like, the difference externally will just be who is interested / impressed. That's the external difference. Who will be interested / impressed. OT should never exist, so we were not being this silly conversation, you think? Could you elaborate on that? I think I'm trying to find meaning where there isn't any. You should be trying to have fun, and in a career of streaming, balancing fun with what people want to watch. Okay, but dropping the career, like letting go of the streaming career concepts. Let go of that, and then, like, what are the pros and cons of spending my hours that I have remaining alive on improving my F-Zero X track records? It's all about time, right? It's about how you spend your time. There's no meaning. Is there any meaning in anything, Bagnala? Social capital. I probably shouldn't have had to question it this much.
I'm good at this game.
Oh, what the heck? Grand Prix. So, yeah, like, when it comes to games like this, I definitely consider myself more interested in individual track records and not so much, like, whole game, kind of multi-level kind of things. That's just my personal preference. I guess speedrun.com doesn't have any of that stuff. It's probably on F-Zero Central or some other site like that. You can't tell me if there's meaning. Meaning doesn't exist objectively. People give meaning to things. There's no purpose to anything. There's no inherent meaning to learning F-Zero X. For you, you might attribute meaning to it in the form of bettering your own records and or engaging with interested viewers, which might indirectly make your day/life better. F-Zero Central has the time trial records. Time trial is much more popular in RTA for this game. That makes sense. It's just that, like, there's like an endless amount of possible games, and an endless amount of possible records, an endless amount of different things to test. And then you ask, when you're comparing different records across different things, like, is there anything you can say about it? Is there anything you can say? Is there anything you can say? And I think there's a lot you can say. I think there's a lot you can say. Yeah, I know, Nintendo. Yeah. And does anyone remember the video where I was pressed against the wall, and then I get off the wall and I'm like, you know, did anyone remember that video? That was a good example of me deciding to do kind of like arbitrary actions with my body on a camera and then like put it up. And it's just kind of showing that, like, yes, I can do arbitrary behavior. But also there's like an endless amount of games, an endless amount of things. And like, you know, there's certain differences between them, like games where you're competing against other players directly, in which the other player's actions influence the game that you're playing as you're playing it, and you need to react and adjust to how the game is going on, like direct competition. That's one type of thing. Another type of thing is something like this, which is, you know, there's a track, there's algorithms, and there's input and there's output, and it's always the same game, and you are in a single player experience trying to optimize for some outcome. And then online those outcomes get like kind of ranked. And that's kind of most speedrunning. Sometimes you get caught in loops worrying about if what you're doing is the most optimal way / thing to be doing. Well, just thinking about like time management. Like, I've decided, right? Like, I've sat down and decided something that I will put hours into is The Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild, the all main quest speedrun. That is something that I've decided to commit myself to. So I sacrificed many hours of my life into that. Many hours, like over 1,500 hours so far, I think. So that's like 1,500 hours of my life in that one thing. And that thing could be anything, you know? Before the game came out, I was like, well, it's just gonna be a data set. It's just gonna be some code. It's just gonna be whatever it is. However it comes out, it's there. And yeah, it came out, and then I was like, all main quest, that's a good way of running it. And then I decided that's what I'm gonna run, and I decided to sacrifice many hours of my life. Yes, sure, having a job is sacrificing hours of your life. What do I get out of speedrunning? Well, for me, this thing is still slowly evolving. Every day it evolves a little bit, and at the moment I'm just kind of keeping up with the metagame as it's evolving. And it's a lot of work. It is a lot of work. And the reason I do it, I guess, is because I don't know why. Why do I do it? So regarding motor skill improvements, it's not so much motor skill improvements. I mean, like, yes, those exist, but like, an aspect of speedrunning I've always liked is that because it is, you know, code, algorithms, and data, etc., that you can think of it in a very objective kind of way. And so when you're learning how to like glitch out of bounds in a game, or if you're learning to like perform well in a room or something, or like execute a strategy well, then like everything that goes wrong with it can be explained by the game. And so if you fail, it's kind of your issue that you failed. I mean, sometimes there's luck involved, but or like variance in general, but there's all sorts of risk management strategies, and if you have a deep understanding of the mechanics, then you know what is like the optimal risk management to perform well. And so you can like a combination of practice and knowledge will get you really far, and then actually churning out runs that take advantage of the effort that you put in to get your time lower and then like feel good about that is something that's nice regarding speedrunning. So, you know, I'm sitting here playing F-Zero X, and it's like, well, now I'm curious about the F-Zero X metagame, if you call it that. So I watched the mechanics video, and I saw a lot of stuff. Obviously, I didn't soak that in very well, because that all takes a lot of practice and understanding. But it kind of just shows how like this game has been cared for by people who care to improve at it and like figure out what are the strategies and how does it work. And so it's like this game has been like played a bunch and developed by players, and of course there's further to go, but it's at some kind of state, and then that video kind of shows the state that it's at, and a lot of stuff is probably figured out and like optimized. And so that's like the state of the metagame, kind of. I have a much more like cold way of looking at it, I think, Nintendo. Like, I think that those kind of words, like, play what you really enjoy, that you want to get more out of. I think it's past that now for me. After, like, with my history of speedrunning, it's not really like that anymore. I'm just worried about, like, I don't know. I feel like there's still there's like still more topic of discussion here, like related to what we've been talking about, that it's not been talked about enough probably. And I don't know. I'm just gonna play. I haven't really used side attacks much.
You got ghost power!
I'm not really... I didn't take in much of that video. But the side attack turning on corners, I actually don't know what I'm doing. Ultra HDMI. I don't know what that is. Damn, I got coal in here. Oh, this is just S video into an HDMI upscaler. Well, I'd have to go back and rewatch parts of the video, like repeatedly, and then like test shit out to like get a better understanding of some of the stuff. I think the choices of games that I ran in the past was pretty... It was by feeling. You can disprove my claim that all categories are arbitrary. Alright, go for it. Alright, drop it on me. Do it. What kind of upscaler? This looks like it would almost be a similar speed game to GoldenEye in a weird way. Well, the IL format. Yeah. An algebraic structure over categories. A lattice. The problem is that it's a single-player video game unless you set up some online with emulator. Why is that a problem? Any percent is the bottom element, a distinguished element. Your main goal now would be to get faster and that's it. Or sorry, you're not Bagnala. Why is any percent a distinguished element? Oh no, I'm doing noob strats. Oh, I need to wait till I unlock the fucking Bloodhawk, or Hellhawk, whatever. Second place. We have an ordering on the categories. Actually, it might make more sense for it to be the top element, but we have partial order based on the constraints of the category. Those constraints always bleed out into the real world, and it doesn't become an objective thing, like, ever. There's always, like, this gray area sinking into the fucking, like, game. Like, always. Always. Like, the game is part of the physical world. I will use noob strats until we unlock the Hellhawk. Or maybe I'll just play casual style until I beat all the Grand Prix shit. I don't know. We'll see. I don't know how much I'll play this today. Oh god, don't do that ever. That's like an F-Zero GX thing.
Watch your back!
It's no, Nintendo. It's XRGB Mini Framemeister. You can categorize the categories as a set of all runs that are legal under that category. Bagnala, this gets into like what is creating the input, Bagnala. Okay, you have a category in which the goal is to like advance a single frame once the game has been turned on, and the input for advancing that single frame, you can convert data, arbitrary data, into inputs. So you could take like a photo of your cat and then translate that into inputs, and then run the category where you turn on the game, and then you feed the inputs of the picture of the cat into the game, and then a frame passes in the game, and the inputs don't matter, and every single fucking picture or data set in the entire universe counts as a valid run. So now any percent's no longer the biggest category because it's not the like there's more possible. See. This is not the end of the lap. Okay.
Finish! Alright! First place!
Wait, hold on, Bagnall. He says we can discount degenerate categories such as that. You need to define what a degenerate category is. What is a degenerate category? Oh Lord.
Watch your back! You got most power! Watch your back!
Oh my god. Holy shit.
Too bad. You lost to me.
The point is to prove the claim that all categories are arbitrary is false. I don't think you've done that. Define arbitrary. Define arbitrary is a good thing to say. That's a good thing to say.
Got most power!
Oh wow. Side attacks.
Watch your back! Yeah! Final lap! One and all! Right on the front! Watch your back! Right out in front! Finish! Alright! First place!
Alright, I think we lost our discussion about arbitrary categories. That's okay. I don't know if there's... As there's nothing special, if that's how you define it. Define special. You argue that there exist categories that have special properties. Well, okay, here's the thing. I think some categories are more elegant than others. I think some categories are more elegant than others. What do you think of that? Is that the specialness you're trying to talk about? Maybe I liked to play as Carrie in Castlevania 64 as opposed to Reinhardt, not because of the glitches in the run or anything like that, but perhaps because I'm transgender. I need to go to the bathroom. Yeah, so maybe the categories you run are a part of your identity. They're part of your identity. They should put transgender pilots in F-Zero NX.
Watch your back!
Oh my god, I'm doing like these F-Zero GX things that are really slow in this game. Baba is definitely gay. You thought I had a cold view, now it's all about feelings and identity. Well, I just mean it wasn't as... Me running Breath of the Wild is not as innocent as being like... Like... It's not as innocent as like... I don't even know how to say what I'm trying to say. Just had the thing earlier where it was like, you ran out of replay value for your favorite game and now you want more replay value. It's like, this is the shit that I said in my 1810 commentary. It's like, okay, great, but now it's like years of being an established speedrunner and I want to return and put a lot of hours into something and make it a big fucking endeavor and journey. Like if I want to do something for long periods of time, it's like I want to do, so I'm like, you know, the Zelda series I've always been close to. Not every game in the series, not even all the 3D Zeldas, but just some of them have been like really fucking good experiences for me running them, and Breath of the Wild fits that. It fits it. And so part of me going in was like, however the game comes out, like however it comes out, it's coming out some kind of way. And like now, as it evolves, it's like stasis launch metagame. Very stasis launch heavy now. And so as the game evolves, you have to accept what the game is. You can't just like hold on to how you perceive you want the game to be. You have to treat the game as it actually is, and that's something you have to do when you speedrun. And so for me to have a kind of more cold view on it, where I understand that it's gonna be some kind of way and there's gonna be some kind of optimal thing to do, and wow, stasis launching, it's stasis launch heavy, and there's other stuff obviously, but that's something you have to accept if you want to be good at it, because that's the true nature of speedrunning. It's not how you want the game to be, it's how the game is.
got boost power!
I'm not even going fast, Steampunk. I'm not going fast. I'm just playing the game. Casual playthrough. The jumps are probably good to take. I think they're good.
You got boost power!
Keep doing F-Zero GX things.
Yeah!
I keep doing like the thing where you like drift one way and then the other way really hard to get like a really sharp turn. It doesn't work in this game, I think. Oh, I'm dead as fuck.
You lost.
The game looks like shit, but it's 60 FPS, and that's the trade-off of it looking like shit. Side attacks do feel good in this game. They do feel good. I mean, I don't really know how to use them appropriately, despite watching that video, but they feel good.
Lesson
Jane,
3.
thank you. How's it going, Willow? They definitely, okay, the creators of this game absolutely targeted 60 FPS. And made the graphics not as good as they could have been at 30 FPS because they wanted it to be 60. I guarantee they very intentionally tried to create a 60 FPS game.
Oh,
that was not so good. This is a track with 2, yeah, okay.
Yeah! Final lap! Alright! First place!
Yeah, no, 3 weeks. It's coming up. Netplay GX? That doesn't sound appealing to me at all. Because that'd be like, what, versus mode? It just doesn't sound very appealing. I would rather do time and trials and then compare them with other people in my chat. But I don't want to do that. I just want to beat the cups in this game. That reminds me how when I woke up today, the very first thing I thought of was that I was feeling good, but like, you know, I'm falling asleep talking to you, or like we're talking and then we fall asleep, and then I wake up and it's like I really desperately want to just like roll on my side and like just like hold you, but you're not there. But we'll get to do that when you're here.
3, 2, 1.
I just lose a lot of health. Oh, jeez. When you woke up in the middle of the night and then I wasn't there, yeah. Yeah. Am I gonna lose my lives? How many? This is the last level. I have 2 lives. I don't know if that's 2 or 3. Not sure. There might be 2, so try to not die. That was a lot of damage. Damage doesn't really matter on the first lap because you're gonna heal and it's fine. I keep doing F-Zero GX stuff. It's not so good. I don't know this track so well.
Watch your back! Yeah! Final lap!
Rubbing my eye feels so good. Fuck. Thanks for playing. I don't have much to say right now. Just playing some video games. I was afraid of that. Fuck. I kinda did that in Super Smash Bros. Melee Linus Red. I spent close to a decade, around 2005 to 2015, playing Melee. I'd say that most of the effort went in from 2006 to 2012. It was like one of my biggest focuses in life. Pretty rough. Oh god. Alright, so... Yes, Severus, yeah. Do the mines help in this game at all? I don't even know. Am I mad at you? I wouldn't say I'm mad at you now. Stay away from the mines, okay.
Watch your back!
I want too many boosts.
Too bad. You lost your machine.
Uh-oh. I'm running out of lives. We're only on level 3. How many lives do I have? I have 2 lives. This is not so good. Is it possible to see the number of followers that I have on Chatterbait? Does anyone know? Oh my fucking god.
Well, you lost your machine.
Follower 0. Oh, I clicked it and I do have a follower. It's Wispy. Wispy is my follower. Yeah, I have 1 follower on Chatterbait. Chatterbait is a place to masturbate online while chatting with others. Yeah, it's just a campsite.
Hold on! Oh, wait out!
That's...
Watch your back! Yeah! Oh, wait out!
Yeah, I don't know how to take that turn with this vehicle, I just don't. This is the run though. And I only have one life for the rest of it. Okay. So Twitch, they have rules about like sexual kind of content. And for a long time now I've had the idea for like a cuddle cast. The cuddle cast. So it's something I wanted to do, but I think Twitch it'd be a problem to do it on Twitch. So Chatterbait seems like the place to do it. It has less stream delay than Twitch, does it? That's funny. It's over. It's over. Unless I have zeroth life. If there's a zeroth life, I don't think there is. I don't think there is. I think it's over. Are you kidding? There's a zeroth life? Alright. Alright. Alright, this has to be the run then. I can't be falling off. No falling off allowed. Don't boost here, you idiots. Why should I boost there? Alright, it's over, it's over. Wait, you emailed Twitch? They don't allow promotion of anything sexual. So really shouldn't be talking about the Chatterbait account at all, really. You emailed about this to confirm. I really just can't promote this other stream here at all, but you can do it on Twitter. Well, apparently I'm not allowed to talk about the fact that I have an account on some site, and I have, you know, I'm Narcissa, right, and everything. So, all right. Something else to talk about then. I didn't like that vehicle, that fucking red gazelle. I'm not a fan of it. record. Oh, I crashed the N64. Really? Crazy Bears top tier. Are you telling me to play Crazy Bear with Max Excel? Alright. I wish I knew what I was doing, but we'll try some stuff. Am I kind of doing it, Naglaria? Kinda. Okay. Side attack most turns. Okay. When I'm turning with side attacks, do I want to be using the control stick? I'm assuming yes. Oh, I see. Hard to tell when to not use a side attack. Is it only for sharp turns that I want side attack? Like not, like if it's a moderate turn that I could handle without drifting out of control, using only the control stick. Should I not be side attacking that? Sharp turns only? Okay. Oh. Dr. Clash. feel like I'm doing F-Zero GX shit with like drifting. It reminds me of GX. I'm sure I'm not doing it very perfectly. Oh, rip.
You want to
I think what I was thinking earlier is just like there's so many possible games to be good at that how do you distinguish the game that you're good at from all the other fucking games in existence? Are you merely the world's most special snowflake with your speed game? Like, what's the deal? How do you stand out from the crowd? How do you stand out? Yeah, that's really, in my opinion, F-Zero GX's stats being like bullshit is really not helpful, and I think it's bad game design. It's not about who is the best, it's about who makes the best YouTube clickbait. Apollo Legend is the greatest speedrunner of all time. There's something that sucks about that. Just slip sliding away. That's fine. Not feeling so good about this race. I don't expect I will, I don't think I'll succeed here. That's all. I think I'm gonna fail. I think it's likely to achieve first in this race. Third though, I'll take it. Alright, we're at the final level, we have 2 lives. Oh wow. How are you supposed to exit a drift? Fuck. As far as I know, Apollo Legend is an amateur speedrunner who cares about the community aspect of speedrunning.
You lost your machine.
So when you exit the drift, you let go of strafe, and then you just turn it to face straight. That sounds very similar to the GX sliding shit. I can't even remember the name of this shit anymore. I don't even know how to exit an MTS correctly. I think maybe at one point I might have known that, but maybe not, actually. I'm not really sure. I think I was never excellent, you know. I was never excellent, so...
Watch your back! Finish! Alright! First place!
I've been pretty good lately. I've been up and down in all sorts of ways. I think I've seen interviews with her that were pretty good. Yeah, the first time I saw The Matrix, I really loved it. Then I probably watched it like 50 times or something. Alright, so did I just beat them all in standard? Oh, we unlocked the Joker Cup. So what's the deal with Bloodhawk? Should I just play Bloodhawk? I actually was feeling Crazy Bear. What would be the differences between Crazy Bear and Bloodhawk? Best stats. Alright. I don't like the yellow, but I can't change it. Oh wow, okay.
Watch your back! Too bad. You lost to the team. You lost to the team.
I mean, even now, the concept of like humans in pods with their brains hooked up to the fucking network or whatever, that's a very relevant concept still.
You lost to the sea.
Well, I'm just like getting a feel for drifting, kinda. It's fun for me. It's a long section.
You got close power.
Oh my god, don't die.
Yeah! Go final left! Watch your back! Watch your back! Too bad. You lost to the sea.
Yeah, but this is like one of the best vehicles for drifting, I think, so. What, Blood Falcon? How old Blood Falcon is? Game over.
You lost to the sea.
Damn, you know the F-Zero lore, Lexi. I've been playing this pretty long. I feel like my right hand's starting to get tired, but it's a pretty good session. The question is though, like, when do I put this away and hook my Switch back up? That's the question. Because there are things to do in Breath of the Wild. And I'm like wasting my hands playing this game. It's fun to kind of drift around a little, but I don't know. I'm using an N64 controller. The steel stick. I've been sneezing.
Hold on! You're way out in front! You got ghost power! Watch your back!
It's my rival, Captain Falcon. Damn, Falcon's fast. Oh, fuck.
Watch your back! Too bad. You lost your receipt.
Alright, I think I'm done playing. It was fun. Learned a bit, but I don't know. I think this was a good time for everyone. So good. Is it Breath of the Wild time? Well, I think I'm gonna end the stream. But I might hook up Breath of the Wild for later. I'm not sure. I just think I'm ending the stream. I just don't know what I'm doing right now. Like, I just ran out of things to do. Just now, So yeah. Thank you for watching.